It is 94 WIP's Birds Town Hall, broadcasting from McGurk's in Royersford, sponsored by NovaCare Rehabilitation, the power of physical therapy. Join McGurk's Madness for great specials all tournament long. All right, so alongside Hugh Douglas, I'm Joe Gilliam. Elliott Shore Parks at the Surfside Free Agency desk today, awaiting an Eagles move. And joining us now for the next hour, Ross Tucker, who is a big part of this station. We get to have on a lot during the season, but I believe this is the first time in Pennsylvania. We had Ross at the Super Bowl live, but now we're back home with Ross live. Ross, how are you, man?
I am fantastic. This is amazing. I live for this, seeing all the Kelly Green out there. You know, I never get a chance to be around fans when I'm doing the preseason games or doing radio, so it's awesome to actually see the people and see everybody excited, including my guy Tony over there. All right, Hugh.
I see that.
And Joe, I need some feedback here.
Yeah, what do we got?
Tony from the Lehigh Valley just handed me this and asked me to sign these, okay? He's got to be selling that,
Are those
right?
Ross Tucker cards?
Those
Yeah,
are nice.
but there's like 20 of them. There's no chance somebody.
Can I give you my philosophy on that? Like,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not mad at anybody hustling, but that's a lot. That's a lot. With those, Ross, I usually go, like, when somebody gives me like 6 or 7 cards to sign, I usually do 2, maybe 3. But in this case, because you have so many, I would probably do 4.
So he's cool.
fair.
He's cool with however many I sign. I just have not. I've never seen someone like the preparation
I like
and
that
the
one.
effort is.
Ross, the ones with the multi, this one right here.
Yeah.
Oh, like I'm saying it like everybody can see me, but it's a rookie card. Well, it's a card that has 3 different positions, like 3 different poses that he's doing. I would definitely sign that one.
Well, thank you. Anyway.
Had you ever seen that many Ross Tucker cards at once?
Yes.
Yeah, because I have them. You know, it's funny. When I was a player and they first had cards in me, I knew I would want them for like later
Yeah,
in life.
yeah.
So every team has like a couple guys that are really into collecting. I don't mean players. I mean fans.
Okay.
And they, you know, we land on the plane. They're there. Like the guy's name was Bobby for the Bills, right? And I had a deal with Bobby that I'd give him some game-worn merch
For cards.
after every game, and he would give me like 20 cards at a time of me. Because as a player, people might not know this. For any player, right? I don't know, Hugh, if you're the same. New pair of gloves and cleats every game, right? Every game, new pair of gloves and cleats. So I would wear those the next week in practice, and then by the next game, you have a new pair of gloves and cleats. So then the one from the week before, I would give to this Bobby guy, and he'd give me like 30 of my cards. So I have like 400 of my cards still like this.
Cool.
Just because I knew I would need them at some point. Hugh doesn't have any. Hugh has one probably somewhere
No,
hanging
you know
out.
what? You know what's
I don't
funny,
have
Ross?
any either. It's okay.
I have.
I have. No, actually, I think I have one when I was in Little League.
I have
They made me one.
every card that was ever made. Well, I had every card at one point that was made. When I had that about years ago. It's like I got like 6 or 7 of these.
I might have had a Hugh Douglas card back in the day.
I think
But
most
those
people
nice.
here probably did.
And I still have some cards in a box somewhere. I keep them because it's pretty cool. Because now, like my son Harper, he doesn't believe it's me. Like he thinks because like that Hugh had hair, and he's looking like, no, that's not you.
There's no way you were that guy.
Yeah. He's looking like, no, that's not you.
We got to figure out, Joe, which Eagles players are going to have cards after
Well,
this year.
that's a good point. Well,
Cooper DeJean.
I need some
for sure.
players on the team they signed maybe today to have some cards. All right, Ross, let's talk about what's happened so far
Yeah.
and what will come here. All right, Ross, what's your level of concern moving into next season about the defense after all the defections? And I know a lot of them were expected, Milton and Josh, for example. But the CJGJ one was not. Darius Slay, maybe, but I don't think everyone was thinking top of mind he was going to be gone. How concerned are you the defense is going to take a step back after all they've lost?
Well, let's start with the fact that we don't have the complete picture yet, right? Obviously, everybody knows that, but it's March 12th. There's a lot of time before they actually play a game. I will say I was not expecting both Slay and Isaiah Rodgers. You know, if they were going to move on from Slay, I guess I would have thought that they would have gotten the Rodgers deal done. In fairness, their 2 best corners are Kenyan Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And so for the third corner, I don't think that they thought Isaiah Rodgers was that much better than Keely Ringo to guarantee him $7.5 million, right? Like, I think they thought those guys are a toss-up. Ringo's an ascending player year 3. We don't need to do that. I have a lot to say about the Gardner-Johnson move.
So
right?
just real quick, because what you said I thought was interesting. I do agree that them not paying Isaiah Rodgers is surprising. But what makes it even more surprising is last year they had a lot of opportunity to get Keeley on the field, and they consistently went to Isaiah Rodgers. And my worry is Vic Fangio, and I've only covered it from 1 year, it seems like he has his guys, and those are his guys. And it felt like Isaiah Rodgers last year was his guy, and Keeley was not.
And I think, Elliot, if you go back to the preseason, which, as we all know, is the most important part of the season if you're watching on television.
You don't got to tell me.
Can't miss broadcast.
If you go back to the preseason, those guys were battling.
Yeah.
Those guys were battling for that spot. I thought it was really close. I think if you look at it like Oren Burks over Jeremiah Trotter Jr., because of how good this team was and because of the season they were having, I think in any of those situations, they were basically a tie or close. They were going to go with the vet. So Rodgers would get the playing time over Ringo, or Oren Burks got the playing time over Trotter. I don't know if they're convinced that Oren Burks is better than Trotter. I think that they thought for that situation.
Yeah.
But now Trotter in year 2, Ringo in year 3. The Gardner-Johnson thing, I think we have to start with this. This will be his 5th year in a row on a new team.
Yep.
His 5th. And do we all agree, everybody, Hugh, Joe, he's a really good football player?
Yes.
Really good.
With a nose for the ball.
Yeah, okay. So if a really good football player is on a new team for the 5th year in a row, I think there has to be some conversation about why that would be.
But do you think it's maybe he's not a really good football player? Because not a lot of really good football players struggle to find a team and a team to pay him.
I think we all have seen he's a really good football player. I think everybody wants to date him and not
they don't want to
marry him.
That just sounds so bad, though, Ross.
I know, but I think people are concerned
about
too much. Him.
The laugh.
I don't know if he talks too
It's
much.
the laugh.
I don't know what it is, but I think there's something to that, right?
So I think that's fair. But be it coincidence or not, Ross, everywhere he leaves doesn't do as well after him. I mean, the Saints have not been as good since he left. Now, I'm not saying he's the only reason. The Eagles' defense went from 2nd in the NFL to 30th when he walked out the door. He came back. They're back to number 1. Again, I know he's not the only reason. And the Lions, while they had a great year, 2 years ago, he made a play on Baker Mayfield in the divisional round, helped them get to the title game. This year, without him and a lot of injuries, they got torched. There's also something to me that everywhere he is, the team is really good. And then when he leaves, they fall off on defense.
Right, and I've been listening. I know you guys already talked about the financial part of it, and they got to pay Jalen Carter. And I don't know how it would have worked out for CJ GJ after they pay Reed Blankenship, right? That might not have gone well, and all of those things are a factor. If I'm being honest, the part about it that is most intriguing to me is I guess I'm surprised they didn't get more. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's focusing on him not being here. They have their reasons why he's not here. Maybe they love Sidney Brown. I love Sidney Brown watching him on special teams. I'm excited to watch Sidney Brown play. So maybe they love Sidney Brown. Maybe a lot of it's the financial. All of those things we can have the conversation of. But to get traded for Kenyan Green and a 5th-round pick, that's the one where, and listen, we know it's Howie Roseman. He might be the best trader.
Yep.
Forget GM. He might be the best trader we've ever seen. So we have to assume that this was the most he could get for Gardner-Johnson. If that's the case, then the NFL is saying loud and clear to the rest of us something about Gardner-Johnson that we don't see when we watch him play, that's the most they could get. Because here's the thing about Green. I know it's part of its money, but he's been terrible.
Terrible.
I'm like Mr. AFC South on CBS, okay? I do a lot of AFC South games. I did multiple Houston Texans games. He's been bad. So they have a lot of faith in Stoutland, obviously. I think they want to have somebody else in the mix against Steen if Becton leaves. But his salary's guaranteed. It's $3 million. You know, if the money was the biggest factor, I guess I'm a little bit surprised they took on a guy with $3 million fully guaranteed that might stink.
Well, for Ross, I have a question. Because obviously, former offensive lineman, you watched him quite a bit, it seems. I'm viewing him as this is basically a rookie coming in. He's younger than some people in the draft right now. It's 3 years, but he was hurt for one of them. Do you think there's been signs in the NFL where he just maybe can't cut it at this level, or do you think it is just like coaching, injuries, that type of thing?
Well,
it's a tough question.
I think he has physical ability, and I've seen it in the run game.
Okay.
He has struggled in one-on-one pass pro. He has struggled with recognition, like knowing where the blitz is coming from, knowing the stunt, all those things. But I think you make a good point, Elliot. He was 20 years old when he got drafted, right? So imagine you're talented enough to be a top 15 pick when you're 20 years old. That guy murdered people in college, right? So he's that physically gifted. The way the Eagles operate is they're always planning. On this show, we primarily talk about 2025. The Eagles don't operate that way. They have one eye on 2025, one eye on 2026, because all their best players are under contract for the next couple years. And I think they look at the financial part of it, but they look at Green as a distressed asset. This is basically going to be this year's Jeff Stoutland project.
Yeah, Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, but not only Mekhi Becton. If you go back to last year, Elliot, Darian Kennard, those last couple preseason games, I was like, holy crap.
They held him all year, by the way.
He can play.
Yeah.
That guy can play. He's probably the swing guy this year, the swing tackle this year. So what does that tell you? There's another guy that was a fifth-round pick that didn't work out in Kansas City for whatever reason. He gets to Philly. Stoutland changes up some technique things. And then think about like when they cut Stoll. Right? They cut other guys that were playing so that they could keep Kennard
on
the
roster. They cut Paris
roster.
Campbell a bunch of times.
So that they could keep Kennard on the roster. So they obviously really like him. So Kenyan Green is basically an in Stoutland we trust situation. And also, I don't think they want to hand Steen anything. I think they want Steen to have to earn it.
They also may have done a lot of work on him then, because that was the draft that they traded one of their picks for AJ. They had 2 first-round picks, right? They traded one for AJ, and they used the other on Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was the 13th pick. Kenyan Green was the 15th pick. Jahan Dotson was the 16th. It seems to me like they had 2 first-round picks in that draft. Ross, they did a lot of work on this guy.
Yes.
Maybe they were going to take him then. I mean, that was the range they were drafting. They had 2 picks before they swapped one out for AJ. Let's take a phone call here, and then I want to ask Ross about where the Eagles roster now today, like at this moment, stacks up, because we know they were the best when the season ended. Are they still there? Has the gap been closed? Art is in Philly. What's up, Art?
Thanks for taking my call.
You got it, Art. Art, what are you feeling on the CJ-GJ trade?
I think it's ridiculous. And I don't care, you guys talking about 5 different teams, this, that, and the other way. All I know is the guy's a great leader. When somebody went after Jalen Hurts, he was the first guy on the field. The big Gagoose at left tackle, he should have been over there knocking the guy down. And furthermore, I don't think much of Vic Fangio. I don't. Every game that you look at, down the stretch, we got to make plays and in our end zone to close out the game. That shouldn't happen. Come on, he's a bend break. I don't like him. You could have him. Give him back to Florida or whatever he came from.
Well, I will keep Vic.
Firing hot here.
Vic, I'm with you on the CJ thing. I wanted to keep him. I don't like the trade. I'm gonna stick with Vic Fangio though.
Art,
pretty good.
I can't remember. Do they have the number 1 defense in the NFL this year or not?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
and you wonder why some of us have a bad reputation.
Art, we love you, buddy.
Respect your elders, Ross Tucker.
So, the Vic Fangio thing caught me off guard. CJ-GJ though, I'm with him. I didn't want to make that trade.
Hey, you know what the problem is about saying what he said about Fangio? It kind of invalidates everything he said before that. It's like, hey, you made a good argument.
Send him back to Miami.
They didn't want him down there.
I know.
Think about that. Think about the Dolphins right now. He was too hard on them. I'd be like embarrassed if I was a Dolphins fan right now.
Well, they should be, because that didn't work out. All right, Ross, let's talk about the roster. And I know we're just in wave 1 of this. Free agency, draft, eventually trades, all that. But when the season ended, when they walked off the field or walked onto the field in the Super Bowl, they were the best roster. Every single person said it, even those that were picking the Chiefs, right? Because we were all going back and forth that week. It was like, well, the Chiefs have Mahomes and Reed, but the Eagles are the best roster. How much has that gap been closed? Do you still view them, even with all these defections, as the best? Or is it now like, hey, they're still good, really good, but they've come back to the pack?
Well, right now, as it stands, they're not as good as they were last year. Remember this, though. We got the draft coming up, and I would not be surprised if they sign multiple guys either in the next couple days that have already been released by other teams, or wait until after the draft when it no longer counts against compensatory picks. Let me just tell you what they're not going to do. They're not signing a guy from another team. I would be surprised. I've seen the Justin Reed reports. Elliot, you've had good posts about that. I would be very surprised if they sign somebody from another team and offset one of these compensatory picks.
So you mean like a regular free agent, not a guy that was just cut?
Right, so people don't know how it works, right? Right now, the Eagles have 3rd, 4th, and 6th round picks coming to them next year for losing Rodgers, Milton Williams, and Josh Sweat. If they sign somebody else, it totally offsets one of those. I can't remember. Elliot, do you know, would it offset the highest one or the lowest one?
Is it based on money?
It's based on money.
It's based on money. So I think they're not going to sign anyone that'll offset the Milton Williams deal.
Right.
But let's just say they handed out a $100 million contract. I believe that would offset Milton. And
Okay, got it. That's
so
right.
I think a good way, Ross, to look at this is Isaiah Rodgers got $8 million guaranteed. That was a 6th-round compensatory pick. I think that's roughly the neighborhood you're probably looking at of a signing.
That they would consider. I think they're more likely.
Yeah, released players. 100%.
But here's the thing: released players, because of that,
they don't count.
They don't count, but more teams are interested in them.
Of course, yeah.
Jonathan Allen to the Vikings.
Yeah.
Joey Bosa to the Bills. More teams want them because of the fact that they don't count. They've come back to the pack, but let me just say this, okay? Is it crazy if I say that arguably the 5 best defensive players for the Eagles from this past season are still on the team?
I don't think it's crazy. So,
Jalen, without question,
Jalen Carter.
Yep,
Zach
number
Vaughn,
1,
Zach
and
Vaughn.
Easily the top 2. Okay,
the 2 young corners.
Yep,
and then Nolan.
Correct.
Yeah, and maybe Reed. I think Reed was pretty good this year. Reed Blankenship.
It seems like they might pay him.
He's not
too.
a top 5 guy.
I mean,
I wouldn't.
Well,
he played every snap for one of the best secondaries in the league. Like Milton Williams, I think was very good, but Milton Williams was a part-time player.
Would you put Reed over any of the other 5 we talked about?
No. I'm saying Reed would
next
after those group. I think Reed's in that conversation.
So my whole thing is they have the entire offense back, except for right guard. I love Mekhi, but I don't think he's that much different than Tyler Steen, if I'm being honest.
Do you think his play gets overrated? Because sometimes I feel like we talk about Mekhi like he was an all-pro, Pro Bowl talent last year. And I think because expectations were low, he was so much better. But I think he was, definitely above average. But he was not on the level, in my opinion, of the other 4.
He's the worst of the 5.
Yes.
And he got, because of it was such a surprise and a pleasant surprise.
Right.
And because he went from bust to average, that was exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the season would have been that different if Tyler Steen played right guard.
I agree.
I don't think it would have been that different. And this is a theme for the Eagles, right? Whether it's Sidney Brown or Tyler Steen, it's time for these guys in year 3 to play. So anyway, to your point, Joe, your question. They have the entire offense coming back, essentially, and their top 5 defensive players. Milton was great. Sweat was great. But, what are we talking about here? Do I wish they were still on the team? Yeah. They weren't even their top 5 defensive players, if you really go through it.
Yeah. They weren't. Hugh, you've been on this. You don't seem to think what's happened the last day or so is going to seriously change their team next year.
Because I think the biggest cog in this blade that I talked about was the fact that you have Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter made life for a lot of people a whole lot easier. Milton Williams is a guy that ate off of the fact
Milton Williams should give Jalen 10%.
Like Ross.
I wonder what his reaction would be to that if Jalen asked.
And not only that,
Ojomo's next contract.
And not only that, Zach Bond, you found a diamond in the rough with Zach Bond. Zach Bond played in a way where he didn't have to do not diminishing anything that he brought to the table because he played well. But he didn't have to do a whole lot. He didn't have to take on guards coming up to the second level. You know why? For the most part, Jalen Carter ate up all of that in the middle. He ate up all of that. He made it easy. Zach Baum made a play one time where the guard came off late. I can't remember which game it was. He came off so late that he was able to get underneath him and get to the running back before the running back got started because Jalen Carter is that disruptive. These are pieces to a saw. Like I said, and when one piece goes, you just add another piece in.
But you have to add the right piece. I understand your point here.
Smart
but
piece.
2 years ago, Jalen Carter was here, and they stunk.
Jalen
Carter isn't a turnkey, not yet at least in his NFL career. Turnkey, you have a top 5 defense because you have him.
You know what?
We haven't seen now. If next year they're top 5 again, then I will say we're moving in that direction.
You know what Jalen Carter has realized is that he is a grown-ass man among boys. Like, Jalen Carter is a grown.
So he grew up, and now you expect it again?
He's a silverback.
Well, that's
he's a silverback.
I like that.
I
Gorilla.
can't believe how many snaps he plays.
I know.
That's what I'm talking
It's remarkable.
about.
I'm
At that
like
size,
shocked by
It's
that.
wild.
Here's the thing that's so interesting. I would think that because they're so young, D tackle and D end, I would think that they would want to bring in vets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially guys that got released. But it's like an all-time draft in terms of depth at D tackle and D end.
Feels like there's like 10 of them.
I don't think they're going to do it.
Rounds.
I think they're going to say, hey, Nolan Smith, it might only be year 3, but you're a young vet. They might say Jalen Carter, year 3, Jordan Davis, year 4. You guys need to lead that room. It's your time. I think they might want those guys to lead that room, and then they might replenish them with draft picks because they probably will. But they got a lot of contracts coming due. And the way Nolan Smith finished the year and the way Jalen Carter played, those guys are both like over $30 million a year if they keep playing like that.
I think they view this as a little bit of a reset year. And they'll compete for a Super Bowl because of who they are, the talent they have. But I think they view this, to your point, Ross, as let's see what we have in a bunch of guys on our roster. Trotter, Keeley, maybe Steen, Kenyan Green. And then next offseason, you can look and go, okay, now we're back full in trying to win the Super Bowl.
I think that's probably accurate.